London, probably one of my oldest friends. And we've known each other for about 34 years, which is a bit horrendous. But anyway, I've always loved her style. I think we've done about 10 photo shoots together a long time ago. And it sort of stays in my memory that actually I don't need to do those pictures again because we did them so well in the beginning that they sort of lasted. And she has masses of panache and totally different style from every other interior decorator in London.
Thank you so much for inviting me on your show.
Yes, absolutely.
I feel so honoured to be here.
I really love your style. So your style is different from everybody else because everybody else is busy doing black marble in a very immaculate way.
Yeah.
And you go to the opposite end of the scale. In fact, you almost don't redecorate, or do you redecorate?
Funny enough, I do redecorate, and I've changed the place around the whole time. I'm always changing the flat around. So like the last time you came, it was one way, and then you walk in today and it's something. And I don't do it because I'm being affected or anything. I do it because I guess it's something to do with the energy. I like to change the energy around.
I totally get that. So now you've got a bed in here,
yeah,
and which we'll show you later.
Yes.
And where actually do you sleep? Do you sleep in the kitchen? I
Yes.
mean, how does it go?
Well, funny enough, I think every room could be a boudoir. So every room to me is like a bedroom. So it doesn't really matter which is my bedroom, and I can sleep here tonight, I can sleep there tonight. They're all the same. It's all the same flow of everything.
I mean, your whole style is sort of underwear, overwear. Out of all the women I can imagine being sort of sexy, it's you, because you're sexy from the soul upwards, and even in your house it's sexy. And it's got amazing ideas, you know. Tell me about your curtains.
I call them house gowns, and the reason why I call them house gowns is like, for us, when we dress ourselves with with our own gowns. We never think about our house having to be dressed. So these beautiful house gowns are made of muslin and vintage lace and hand-dyed. I make them with my friend Antonia, and they divide rooms. They're instead of walls, and they're just beautiful pieces of muslin and vintage lace.
And they sort of float.
They just float.
This room feels like fairyland to me. You know, I feel like I enter fairyland, which is why I love it so much. How did you start this?
I used to get back from school at a very young age, I remember, and go into my bedroom and literally change the bed from one place to another. You know, I was always really into space and what would it feel like to sleep over that side of the room? What would it feel like to sleep with an orange scarf over that lampshade? You know, what would it do? So I was always experimenting when I was a child. So I think I was born to do this. Brand new things you've got to be so careful with. These things, you know, if the more bashed they are, or the more wine gets spilt on the floor, the better.
Exactly.
And I like that. I like living like, you know, in a very easygoing, don't worry about it, spilling anything on anything, and kick back kind of fashion. I like that.
And so when you're painting the walls, do you actually think about that as you're painting them, or so you strip them back and then you repaint them?
Well, Andrea, my wonderful, wonderful artist, is a specialist painter, but she makes everything look like it's hundreds of years old.
So tell me the story of the panel.
Well, in this room, this is actually made by Simon from Babcock, so this is actually brand new plastering. So I found the mould and I gave it to Simon, and then he did the moulding. But the room next door, I was doing up a house in Amsterdam, and the house next door was for sale with all its ingredients, the floorboards, the panelled rooms and everything. So I bought all the floorboards and the panelled room, which we'll see later as we walk through, from this house that was for sale in Amsterdam.
So that's why it's so utterly unique, because of course it comes from Amsterdam and it was never made here.
No, it was never made. Next door is hundreds of years old. These floors are from an old boathouse in Amsterdam. They're hundreds of years old and they're stained and they're
So you chose Amsterdam? You didn't
well, I was
choose
doing up a house in Amsterdam. And
so it was
place
easy?
Just happened to be, I didn't.
You used to have also a fantastic shop where you sold lingerie, you sold cushions, you sold... do you miss that?
It's called Sarah of London. It was called the Fancy Lady Shop.
Yes, that's right. And they all look fantastic.
And it was designed for fancy ladies. And I think all of us can be fancy ladies, why not? And I sold the most exquisite umbrellas for ladies when it rains, the most beautiful umbrellas with like frills on,
and frills
and all that sort of stuff. And then beautiful hats, and I opened Terry de Havilland his own shop there.
I remember.
downstairs.
Terry de Havilland made fantastic 1970s
Rock and roll
boots,
shoes.
real rock and roll shoes. Yeah. I've got a pair. So you had little alcoves.
Little
I remember.
alcoves. It was like a little
and
treasure
it
trove.
was very sexy. I remember being very influenced there. And then, you know, you've worked with lots of other designers too. I mean, you worked with Mark Brazier-Jones doing lamps up on stage.
Yeah.
So tell me about working with other people.
I love working with other people. I mean, I could never do it all on my own. It's all about collaboration.
It is.
It really is. It's all about, but it's finding the right people to collaborate with. I work with people that I've worked with for years. I mean, you know, I've been doing this now for 30 years or so. I used to work for Sadler's Wells. I used to design the operas, for the E&O, and I used to design some of the costumes. So I came from that world. So for me, when I meet somebody and I get them and they get me, it's like, oh, my friend, thank goodness. Join the club.
It's like that, join the club.
You know, like Andrea, for example, who's painting next door.
Yes.
Andrea just gets, if I say to Andrea, give her a few references, she gets it in a second.
You know, what I really loved, okay, because I always think, you know, I go on a lot of debates and marches and things like that in London at the moment because, you know, they're very fashionable and I go to a lot. And I really think they're a scruffy bunch, okay? But with you, you went and did your own march and it was quite extraordinary. I mean, you told everybody what to wear. You said just wear red or, you know, come as exotically as possible.
Well, it was actually the red thing that really, but you know, if you all come en masse in one colour, it makes such, you know, such an impact.
Well, if you put everybody who's different sizes in one gear, they will all look the same size. I mean, it's why everybody always looks, and they all look slim as well.
Yeah. No, but the idea that you're, you know, you're doing a peaceful march all in red.
Yes.
So you see a sea of red people just coming towards you. It's quite, you know,
And what was your
spectacular.
idea in your head? Because although we discussed it, I mean, it was much more glamorous than I had envisaged. I knew you would be glamorous, but it was quite incredible.
Well, it was the whole idea about the peaceful demonstration was that it was over COVID, and that people were fighting over anti-vax, pro-vax, climate change, not climate change. Everybody was fighting about
Nothing.
Nothing.
From
I mean,
Brexit
for God's sake, you know, let's just get together and like have a peaceful march. If you're anti-vax, that's fine with me. If you're pro-vax, that's fine with me. You know, that doesn't mean that we have to fall out with each other, but there was a lot of that.
The same with Ukraine. If you're Ukrainian, we love you. If you're Russian, we love you.
I mean, I think it's slightly different with the Ukraine, you know, war now, because watching everything that's going on, it's absolutely horrific.
Yes.
You know, so from an emotional stance, absolutely heartbreaking to see, you know, whether who's right, who's wrong. It's like the Holocaust all over again.
Exactly.
And we're sitting in England, you know, twiddling our
unable
thumbs.
to do anything.
Except for make it very clear on our social medias that we've got.
Yes, that all we want is peace. So, you know, you use a lot of things. You use palm trees. You use feathers, you use bits of 15th century fabric. I mean, you merge them all together and make it work. And I love that idea. So what inspires you?
As I said, from a child, I've always been like this. I used to do little drawings at school when I should have been listening to the teacher, of having a plain white room with all these big Kentia palms, because I suppose in the 1970s, like that's what I used to see, big Kentia palms everywhere. So I'd have a Kentia palm in each corner of the room, and all the floorboards, everything would be white at the time, because I didn't really think about black ceilings, which now I only have black ceilings.
I love that.
It seems to ground everything.
I said black ceiling to a man the other day and he was absolutely appalled.
You know, people don't get black.
No, I do.
Black's not really a colour, black's an invisible. So with the fabrics, I really got into fabrics when I was a punk rocker when I was like 14. So so obviously I had a very low budget, and I'd go to all the markets, and at that time vintage clothing you could buy it for a song. So I'd buy all my Victorian little camisoles and I'd mix them up with little fishnet stockings and little granny boots, and that was my punk gear. And then from there I learnt about vintage textiles from such a long, you know, without realising what I was doing. I had a whole lesson on vintage textiles from buying all my clothes.
And where do you buy them now?
So Alfie's is a great place.
It's in Lisson Grove.
In
isn't
Lisson
it?
Grove,
Yeah.
it's around the corner. Obviously Portobello Market, but the prices have obviously gone up. But you know, if you see something really wonderful, it's worth the money if you can afford it.
Yes.
And then again online, you know, people are selling beautiful textiles and vintage clothing.
Yes.
And I collect vintage clothing. I've been wearing it ever since I stopped being a punk rocker, and then I suddenly got into vintage.
Yeah, you
And
look great in it.
That's a huge inspiration for my interiors, wearing, you know, what I
And
wear.
hats.
And hats, I love hats.
I love that.
them.
And fingerless gloves. I absolutely love fingerless
I
gloves.
love fingerless gloves.
I really think I was inspired by Liza Minnelli. You know, when she was doing Cabaret. I think it taught me everything, that film, because, you know, it was about the terrible injustices in the Second World War. Cabaret, which I love the idea of mixing cabaret with disaster. And the reason I started to think about green and blue nails, because she comes out of the thing and she goes, divine decadence, you know, like this, divine decadence. So I was very inspired by her. Who was your inspiration?
I could never sleep when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So it was all about after a certain time, the television stopped, and then they put on these foreign films. Remember that?
Yes.
And I mean, I was completely inspired by film, and I still am. My inspiration is definitely not so much English. It's more Italian. It's more old French. It's people say, oh, it's quite Moroccan here, but it's not really Moroccan here. But I love Marrakesh. I love it.
Of course we do. So you do them often with Philip's salon.
Oh, Philip's
Tell me that your relationship with Philip, because I thought
Philip.
you were almost married.
Philip's like my auntie.
He's
He
very
really
nice.
is like my auntie. So Philip started was one of the people who started the punk rock movement
Yes.
with Vivienne Westwood. Certainly started the new romantic movement with Steve Strange.
Yes.
Had the Mud Club, which was a very famous club in the 80s. But Philip's a very, very intellectual genius man. He can come across as being quite sort of eccentric, and he's an intellectual, he's an
Yes.
academic, he's very political, but he's also very he's flamboyant and he's an eccentric. He's one of the one and only eccentrics left in this country.
Exactly. And he says, don't trap me in an opera.
So this is Philip Salon, who has hand-painted, hand-drawn the menu for my trailer that I'm designing, but I haven't actually seen it in the flesh, so I'm very excited. Philip, thank you for coming.
I mean, it was really difficult because normally I do something on an A4 piece of paper, like a piece of writing paper. Now this is poster size. I've never done any writing this size or anything. But you know, it is what it is. It's a menu. So
Oh
look,
my
look,
God,
look.
I want to come here.
Oh my goodness me. I mean,
Oh,
that is...
wow.
It wasn't easy. It was
Absolutely.
really difficult.
Was it?
And I soaked it all in tea first. I put it in the oven. Oh, it was cream card actually, and I said it looks all a bit new. So I've tried to distress it.
I think it looks incredible.
Are you real, oh Sante, or just a cold and lonely, lovely work of art?
So tell me about love stories and love. How much does it mean to you?
So if you're talking about romantic love, if it's the right person, then it's wonderful. If it's the wrong person, forget it, I'm not interested. I love men, but I don't need men. I'm quite private about my romantic life.
And with that, I think we should just end there, and then we can walk around and you can tell me all about everything that's beautiful in this place.
Fine.
I mean, look at it. And look at this amazing little... I don't know where she gets this. She has loads of stuff. It's sort of falling down, but it's sort of really pretty. Now, for me, you see, but I'm so different from you. I'd immediately think, oh my God, they're all falling to bits. I need to immediately get them immaculate. No, but you love them like this.
paint.
Exactly.
I
This
love-
is that she's got more style. It's called style. I love this bath too, but of course I'd use it as a bath.
I know, but the thing is, it's not plumbed in, and it would. I don't know. I bought it because it's such a beautiful thing.
It is. It's
But
beautiful.
it actually is a fantastic storage place for even more hats.
So Sarah, tell me about your food truck.
Well, it's not a food truck; it's a trailer, and it's for a cocktail. It's a cocktail brand called Osante, and it is going to be. It's the first trailer I've ever decorated, and it's the idea is actually it's going to look quite like my kitchen in black and gold.
Gold leafing, sanding down, distressing, very much Sarah's look, which is strong but subtle at the same
Subtle.
time.
It's going to look like it's always been there. It's hundreds of years old. So this is my bed,
It's so romantic.
and these are house gowns. It's because it's so big and you can just loll around and
Yes,
you know.
and and have a lovely time.